Let me know if all of you are able to see my screen.
Yes.
Maria, I can only see you as pinned. I don't know why. I'll just check if that's for others as well.
Sorry, say it again.
I'm able to see your screen as pinned as the thumb, like the main screen. I'll just check that.
The presentation is on main screen.
The presentation is coming on the main screen? Okay. All right. And it's visible for everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Simon, thank you. Okay. So in terms of the core competencies, I just already, I think, shared about myself. So introduction. Uh, I'm also a very proud member of the ICF Luxembourg chapter and very grateful for this opportunity to present, this work, this webinar with all of you. And I am also looking forward to deepen my own understanding of these competencies. So as we all come together and reflect on this, for all of us, we create a co-learning space together. So I'm very, very grateful for that as well, for all of your presence. So as shared earlier, that we have already done the 1 and 2 of the core competencies in the last webinar. And today we are looking at competency 3 and 4, which comes under co-creating the relationship. So a lot in this webinar will be focused on the relationship that the coach and the client and all the relevant stakeholders and the sponsors who all are involved in that coaching relationship are creating together. So how that relationship gets created together and is maintained and is sustained and is visible in form of the coaching, and how we demonstrate that attributes like trust and building safety and maintaining that professional coaching relationship with our clients. So core competency 3, the establishes and maintains agreement, is about the coaching relationship. Now, coaching relationship is a longer relationship. It could be, for different coaches, it will be customizable, and it could be anywhere between, say, 6 to 12 months. And that means that the coach and the client, they work together for a long term agreement about the goals the client wants to achieve, on the goals that the sponsor wants the client to achieve and hence is sponsoring that relationship. And also, this relevant stakeholder, it's important for them as well, because the people who are getting coached either are part of their team or are directly involved with them. So in the last webinar, we covered the definition of who is a coach, professional coach, who is a client, who is a relevant stakeholder, and who is a sponsor. I'll just briefly touch upon that again. So, professional coaching is different from any other form of work like mentoring or advising or suggesting or being a subject matter expert, etc. It's different from consulting and all other fields. So when we talk about professional coaching, the definition, it talks a lot about what coaching is not. So all of that we covered last time. And the sponsor could be the organization or the HR or L&D function in an organization who is sponsoring this coaching relationship. Or it could be a university, in the case if it's happening in a university, or any other place, wherever it is happening, whosoever is sponsoring that coaching becomes the sponsor. And an example of a relevant stakeholder could be a manager who wants to get their key team members coached. So the manager becomes a relevant stakeholder here, whose two key people who reports into that manager are getting coached. So that's how we distinguish between a relevant stakeholder, a sponsor, and the client are these two people who are reporting to the scheme manager. So they are the client, and the coach is the professional coach here. So whenever we say coach in the ICF terminology, it will always be the professional coaching, which is different from any other form of coaching. So we discussed about ethics last time. So professional coaching is kind of defined with all the standards of ethics that we abide by. So here, when we read the definition, it says that partners with the client and relevant stakeholders to create clear agreements about the coaching relationship, process, plans, and goals. Establishes agreements for the overall coaching engagement as well as those for each coaching session. So now when this client and the coach comes together and there is also a sponsor and a stakeholder involved, they all, either the sponsor and the stakeholder, they already came with an agenda for the coach, for the long term coaching. They already had, like, for example, they wanted high performance coaching for their leaders. So they already came with that agenda and they also shared that with the coach. So there is already some goal or agenda available. And then the coach comes in a kind of a meeting together with the relevant stakeholder, sponsor, and the client to decide what is the master plan for the entire coaching journey of, say, 6 to 12 months that they are going to take together. What will the end look like for them? What is the final goal that they're looking at? And then when they look at the larger major goal, then they also break it down into what does it look like for them? What are the smaller goals which are coming from that larger goals that is tangible that they want to look at in this whole coaching journey? So how will the end look like? So what is that overall master plan that they're looking at with respect to the coaching? So that is the first thing. It is also about the partnering with the client in terms of clear agreement about the coaching relationship. So when we say that agreement about the coaching relationship, so what is the role of the coach? What is the role of the client? The role of the coach, for example, is to keep a track or the focus on the goal in the entire journey, is to be the timekeeper in each of the session, is to hold a very sacred space for the client to enable reflection, to be non-judgmental, to be non-directive, to be non-authoritative in their being, in their way of showing up as a coach. So all these are the coach's role. And the client's role is to bring the intention, to bring the agenda. It is always client's role to bring the agenda. The coach cannot bring the agenda for this coaching relationship. And it is also the client's role to take the action. So the coach cannot be held accountable for the result. It is the client who is accountable for taking the action and for so as much as the coach is in support of the client's agenda, it is very important to explain at the beginning of the relationship to all the stakeholders, to the sponsor and to the client, that what is the coach's role and what is the client's role. It could also be useful to probably share the document of ethics with the sponsors, the relevant stakeholder, or the client. Sometimes our clients come with an understanding of what coaching is, and sometimes they don't. So it's important that kind of those basic things to be shared with all of them. And then based on that, the agreement is established. So we will read, this is the basic definition, but the details of it will come in each of the sub competencies as we go through it. So let's kind of reflect on those together. And please feel free to add if you have any reflections, any questions. If you have, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. The first one is explains what coaching is not, and describes the process to the client and relevant stakeholders. Now, I always, whenever it's written in the competency that what coaching is, I always explain it saying what coaching is not, because that is easier for me to explain. So I always say that, and I always add the professional coaching term when I work with my client, because I also want to distinguish my positioning as a coach, as a professional coach, that I am a part of the ICF community, and that, I stand for the ethics that we abide by, and I am a professional coach. So I always use the terminology professional coach. So what professional coaching is not, and this we also covered in the last webinar, that if I am not a professional coach, and when I work with my corporate clients, the sponsor or the stakeholder might ask me that, Rashmi, can you share what is happening in the coaching with this client? Can you share the progress with me? Maybe on a weekly basis. And if I'm not a professional coach, I might say yes to sharing the feedback on what is happening in the coaching. But there, I violate the very basic and very first principle of a professional coaching, which is confidentiality. So the professional coaching is not somebody who is breaking confidentiality or sharing the progress or feedback of what is happening. So for us, our client always comes first, and it is holding a very, very safe space for our client that comes first. So we can never share what is happening inside the coaching session. uh, Professional coaching is also not a therapy, or it's not therapeutic. So sometimes we will experience that the client kind of goes in a zone or place which is very difficult for them to kind of process. And if we see that they need corrective action and they are looking for therapeutic corrective action, then it is very important for us to clarify that we are professional coaches, we are trained as professional coaches, but not licensed as therapists. And that is not what we offer. So very, very important to distinguish and draw that line, that I'm a coach, but I'm not a therapist. And hence, maybe I can recommend some people to you, but that is not what I do. So let's explore together how you can get the best support here for this need. But this is not what I do. So that's also not a coaching. It is very funny, but I have experienced, and I come from the human resources background. So when I came into coaching and I saw a lot of people doing coaching in different ways, I also saw that there is a very big uh, misconception that coaching is training, and that coaching and training is the same with a lot of people. And even people in the HR or in the corporate understand that sometimes coaching and training is the same thing. So if they're looking to improve, say, communication skills for their people, they say that, okay, I'm hiring a coach to improve the communication skill of these people. So that coaching is not. Coaching is not training. So it's important to explain that if you're looking for corrective measures, training might be the solution, but not coaching, because coaching is 100% customizable space. It's a space where we work with individuals who have some goals in their mind, and we provide that space for them to reflect and look inwards. And that with those insights, they come up with their own action plan. And so we are not providing any kind of education or advising or suggesting in that space. So if that is happening, then that's not coaching. So it's important to kind of also break those misconceptions for the client or the sponsor or the relevant stakeholder, that coaching is different from training. And this is what we do as professional coaches, and this is what we don't offer as professional coaches. So this would be more or less. Anyone wants to add anything here, ask any question or any reflections? I can't see all of you because I'm presenting. So if there is anything, you can just unmute and say. And
I will have some questions, but I prefer that you go over everything and I'm just writing them down. Then we can talk at the end. I think then I don't interrupt the flow here.
sure, no worries.
I have a question.
Yes.
On the first point about that the professional coach can't share feedback, with the sponsor or stakeholders, is it appropriate at any point for the professional coach to do the reverse, to ask for feedback from the sponsor in terms of what they're experiencing in the client relative to shared goals?
Yeah. So how it can be, yeah, so both is possible. Like when, as a professional coach, if you want to share feedback, what you can do is you can facilitate a session where the client can speak about the progress that they are experiencing through this coaching. So the if the relevant stakeholder and sponsors are interested in the progress of the coaching journey, then all of them can be invited together, and the coach can be the facilitator in that session where they can kind of encourage the client to share what their feedback. They can also share in terms of like the frequency and duration of what is happening. Like if they're not sharing the content, as long as they're not sharing the content of the session, it's okay to kind of share that we are having like a session every week, or we are having 1 hour session, etc. And in that session itself, it's possible that you can tell the sponsor that it will be very, or the relevant stakeholder, that it will be very useful if you are seeing some progress in the client. And if you want to, for example, they are seeing a very important change in the client in terms of their communication style with their team. Now they have become much more better listeners in the way they're listening to their team. So, and the relevant stakeholder is able to observe that because they are a part of those team conversation. So you can encourage the relevant stakeholder that it is also your role during this coaching journey, that if you are observing some feedback, you can acknowledge the client for that, because it helps if somebody is acknowledged to kind of reinforce that behavioral change in them. So because you are a part of, you are their leader, you are their manager, and if you are observing something, so they can of course share with the coach, but you can also kind of have this discussion during your initial check-in session, that as a relevant stakeholder, this could be your role as well, that you observe what is happening, what changes are happening, and you kind of, whenever you're seeing some positive changes, you can give some feedback to the client. That's completely okay.
Can I share something?
Yes, sure.
I'll turn on my camera. Sorry, I was eating. We just started the sunset, and so we were eating because we're
Yes.
fasting.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say that, from managing the expectations of the key stakeholders for me is a really important part of coaching within an organizational setting, because there's an investment in the people that are being coached. And so just like helping the HR person who gets us in, the sponsor, to understand right up front what the contract is, I think is so important. I've just come out of a coaching relationship where we actually right at the very beginning, like you said at the beginning, we sat with the line manager and with the sponsor and with the client to speak about what would be key outcomes that would be sought in the coaching relationship. And we agreed on what that reporting would be. So we agreed that there would be reporting, but together with the coaching clients, we actually said this is what would be included in the report. And so we also made it available to everybody to see, so that at no point were we sharing anything with the sponsor or with the HR director, whoever, outside of what the agreement was with the client, and the client could feel sure that what was reported was only what was agreed. So for me, that part is really a very important part. So thank you for that. I do have a question, though, as well, related to it. As part of this competency, it says something about a long-term relationship with all of the key stakeholders, but also in the session. So if I go back to reading just what the competency says, it says I'm just reading the last part, establishes agreements for the overall coaching engagement as well as those for each coaching session. And so when I'm going through the process of being assessed by the ICF, and contracting happens very often outside, the kind of contracting that we're referring to happens outside of that coaching experience that is being recorded to be assessed for the ICF. What are the markers that they look for when they then are assessing to see whether or not I meet this competency? Can you share that with us, Rashmi?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Most welcome. So in terms of the markers, and thank you for sharing the part on how you share your feedback with the organization, with the relevant stakeholder, like that's also one of the good ways that you shared that can be done, that there is a agreement with the client and then a report is created together. So that thank you for adding that. In terms of the assessment, as an assessor, what we look at are the markers. So if you might have seen the PCC marker document, there is a document called the updated PCC marker by the end of 2019-20. So there is a marker on that, and then for depending on the applicant, if they're applying for ACC or PCC, we see which markers are essential for PCC and ACC and which are met or not met. So these same competencies are also converted into marker languages. And so if, for example, if you have to read the marker 3.1 to 3.4, which is related to establishing and maintaining agreement, it talks about, coming up with the goal for the session. That is 3.1 primarily, that the, outcome or the goal for the session is there. It is understood that what will be the measure of success for each individual session. How will so basically the client and the coach come with an agreement that this is how I will know by the end of my session that my coaching session was successful for me. So that's 3.2. 3.3 is about the meaningfulness or importance of that goal for that session. And the last one is about the barriers. The 3.4 is about the barriers, the potential barriers coming in the way, or the strengths that could be useful for the client to reach their goal. So that way, like each competency has been translated into markers. So for the assessors, the marker document becomes the guiding document when we are assessing the recording. that is this observed or not, is 3.1 observed or not observed, 3.2 observed, and depending on ACC and PCC also, then the degree will vary of what is really required and what is not, what is okay and not okay. So I don't know if I answered your question, or is there anything else I can answer
No,
you
you
there?
you did. Thank you very much. When I was working with my mentor coach, I think that this marker is like such a new, this competency is, for me, was such almost foundational one, because when I'm getting this one right, then I get and we used to call them bookmarks, then I get the bookmark at the end right, because we establish such clear agreements in competency 3 and figuring out what the client wants to do in the session, that it almost makes coming full circle back to that so much easier. You're able to tick, I think it's competency 8 or something, where you're able to tick off those things because competency 3 has already been established. So yeah, thank you. You'd answered it beautifully. Thank you.
Most welcome. I just share my screen again because I was not able to see my slides. Yeah, so in terms of the second one, reaches agreement about what is and is not appropriate in the relationship, what is and is not being offered, and the responsibilities of the client and relevant stakeholders. So again, we almost covered that in the first one while we were discussing the first one, that the agreement, and it's also, the agreement is also in the form of a contract, which is between the coach, the client, the sponsor, and the relevant stakeholder. And there is another sub point which will be covering the contract. So basically, reaching an agreement in the foundation, in the chemistry, or in the check-in session, that, you know, about confidentiality, that this is something that confidentiality will not be breached, so that's not, it's not appropriate for the sponsor or stakeholders to get information about what is happening, and we will do it in a manner that kind of respects the confidentiality of the client. And what is not offered, so it's important to explain that, training is not offered here, or other consulting is not offered here, but coaching is offered. So this is what happens in professional coaching, and I will be kind of sticking to that format. The responsibility of the client and the relevant stakeholders, we discussed already, that the client will be bringing the agenda, the client will be bringing the intention, the client will be bringing the responsibility. Of course, in coaching, the clients we work with are very responsible people. They are already conscious people, and they come to coaching because they want to be more aware and more conscious. So so they will be kind of responsible for taking action. So all of that is the responsibility of the client and the relevant stakeholder. So I gave an example that what could be the responsibility of the relevant stakeholder could also be discussed in the earlier discussion, the first primary discussion that we have, that the relevant stakeholders could be encouraging during the entire coaching journey with the client, and they could be giving feedback to them whenever they're observing some positive changes, so that reinforces the behavior. So all those things could be discussed, and what is the responsibility of the coach could also be kind of clarified. The third one is about reaches agreement about the guidelines and specific parameters of the coaching relationship, such as logistics, fees, scheduling, duration, termination, confidentiality, and inclusion of others. So here the guidelines will be about the coaching contract that we come up with. So whatever is mentioned in the coaching contract is something that needs to be discussed with the client and the relevant stakeholders and the sponsors, and explained in a very easy manner so that it's understood and agreed by all the relevant stakeholders here in this. And sometimes it's like how you are going to do the coaching. Like you as a coach might be somebody who does their coaching virtually, or you might be somebody who does your coaching in person. So all of that could also be discussed, that this is my preference and what is the client's preference, so what is possible for both of you to do together, what will work for both of you. So that comes under logistics. What will be the fees for the entire coaching journey together? Scheduling. So for some clients that I used to work with who were in the startup segment, they used to prefer 30-minute session every week. But then there were some, people I was working with who used to prefer 1.5 hour session every 2 weeks. So depending on the context and the world your client is coming with, the scheduling and the duration of your coaching sessions might be customized or might be different. So it's important to kind of understand and discuss what is it that works for both you and your client, depending on what context they are coming from. Because understanding the client's context is also the premise of professional coaching, that how can we serve our clients to the best of their context. Termination. So, how will the contract be terminated? Is there a clause for renewal of the contract if the clients want to work with you and renew the contract and work again? Um, Confidentiality, anyway, we have covered, and that's very, very important. And inclusion of others, like the relevant stakeholders, what will be their role, etc. Those could also be kind of outlined there in the agreement. There are some sample coaching contracts that are available on the ICF website. So a reference could be taken from there. And there will be some other contracts that you can also get from other professional coaches who are using if you need one. Uh, So, although the code of ethics is not something that gets mentioned in the contract, if you feel that there is a need, you can also share that additional document with the sponsor or the relevant stakeholders, that these are the code of ethics that as a professional coach I will be abiding by. So that kind of also helps to build that confidentiality perspective in your sponsors and relevant stakeholders, that why am I saying that confidentiality is so important as a coach. The fourth one is about partners with the client and relevant stakeholders to establish an overall coaching plan and goals. So we discussed this earlier as well. So in the check-in session, in the chemistry session, the earlier session that we are having together, the overall coaching plan and goals for the entire coaching journey of 6 to 12 months that we are going to have with the client, and with the contract almost set now, assuming that now the contract is in place, the initial discussion is in place. Now we work on the goals and the coaching plan together. So, what are some of the goals we are looking at? What will be the end outcome that the client is looking at? So, coming up with those in some more concrete way. So, there could be a complete goal setting session that can be done. And here, it could also be a joint goal. So, the organization and the sponsor or the relevant stakeholder have some goal, and they want the client, because they are sponsoring that relationship, they want the client to work on that goal. So it becomes like a joint goal which is coming from all of them together. So incorporating that and then discussing with your client that with these goals in mind, what is it that we are looking at in terms of our overall coaching engagement together, the larger engagement together, and what do you want to see by the end of this journey for yourself. So that, and then very important, the fifth one, partners with the client to determine client coach compatibility. And this I feel is the bedrock of any coach, success of any coaching relationship. The compatibility between the client and the coach, the chemistry between the client and the coach. And I have worked with so many amazing coaches as peer coaches, the coaches that I have trained, that I have mentored, and all of them are spectacular coaches. But that doesn't mean that all of them will be good for a particular client. So the coach client chemistry is something that can only be understood when the coach and the client meet with each other. It cannot be understood, it cannot be decided by like a third person, like an HR person or an L&D person. They cannot do the matching and say that, okay, this is the best coach for this person, and just go ahead and do this. So a lot of times I've seen that the effectiveness of the coaching relationship, irrespective of the coach being a great coach, was not there because the chemistry was not there between the coach and the client. So, and in earlier days, it used to happen that the deciding who will be the coach was done by like a third person. But now most of the places I'm seeing that it is like there is a short meeting. So they take a panel of coaches, usually in the organization like ACC or PCC coaches, and then they ask the people, the clients who are going to go through those coaching relationships. Do you have a short meeting? And you can look at their resumes, and then you can have a short meeting, and then you can decide whom do you want to be coached from. So usually when that happens, there is a higher probability of a better compatibility or a better chemistry between the coach and the client. And it goes both ways. So it cannot be just one way that the client decides who the coach should be. The coach should also look at, is this client okay for me or not to work with? Am I feeling comfortable working with this client or not? And you should never force yourself to be in a relationship which is not comfortable, like even in the coach client or relationship. So that is what is really, really important. And ICF also emphasizes on the client coach compatibility a lot. Any reflections for anyone so far?
Yes, well, given the fact that I'm new on this, it may sound basic, but usually and most of the clients I have right now, they are private individuals. I haven't started in companies because I want to have my first level on the ICF. That's why I've been holding on that. But usually when I do a 20 minutes around complimentary session, and there I explain everything. And there is this client coach compatibility is where it's something that we don't mention, but you feel it when we are both talking, So my question is this the right way of doing this? Because I'm doing this because for me, the compatibility comes even before starting a formal process, right?
Yes, absolutely. Compatibility is something which is more sensed than directly kind of understood. So that's there. I also try to understand more about my client in my foundation session, where I try to really understand who this client is, what is their life situation, who is there, like what are they, married, not married, who is their what kind of relationship are they in, what is their significant half, their relationship with the significant half, what is the context in their work, like how is their relationship at their work, what's happening. So I try to also understand overall this person, not only in terms of the goals that they bring, but also in terms of the life context they come from. So that also, while I have that conversation, it helps me to sense and understand if, I am the right coach for this person. Like, am I kind of sensing that? But yeah, usually it is done. It is our senses that tells us that is this chemistry there or not. And it could also be that during an engagement, you realize that during that relationship, and there might also be a possibility to having that kind of a clause in that there is a possibility of kind of terminating a contract if it is not working for either of the parties. So that's also possible. It hasn't happened with me, but I'm sure it should be possible. Like it should be okay, like for both the coach and the client. If it is a relationship which is not working in terms of chemistry, then there should be a possibility to also kind of end it, because it's best possible for both the coach and the client to work with somebody where there is more chemistry. And
Rashmi, you call it foundation session. Is this what you said?
yeah, like it different people could call it differently. It's also called chemistry session or
Okay. Just for
foundation
me
session.
to
Yeah.
understand in the English, it's very important
Yes.
for me to get the term. So, okay, that would be the first session before you decide to. Okay, excellent.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
So now here we are going from a broader context. So we spoke about overall the coaching definition, explaining everything to the client, sponsors, and stakeholder about coaching and responsibilities and what is offered, what is not offered to the contract, and then about the client coach compatibility, and also setting the overall goals for the entire journey. Now we are coming from that broader to a narrower focus. We are talking about the session, each individual coaching session. So the sixth one talks about partners with the client to identify or reconfirm what they want to accomplish in the session. So a question like, in the next 50 minutes or 40 minutes that we have together, what is it that you would like to see by the end of our session today? So really bringing the focus of the agenda for that session, for those 50 minutes or for those 60 minutes or for those 30 minutes that you are going to work with that client, what is it that the client wants to walk away with by the end of that session? So this is about identifying or reconfirming that goal that the client brings for each of the individual coaching session. So client brings the agenda or the goal, and the coach's role is to keep the focus on that goal for the entire session. The coach's role is to keep the time for that entire session. So for a lot of new coaches, they struggle with keeping time sometimes, or they say that the client was speaking a lot about this thing and I couldn't interrupt because it didn't feel comfortable to interrupt them. But we have to understand that as coaches, we are the timekeepers. It is completely our responsibility to keep track of the goal and time for that session. So if the client is getting distracted, is going away from the goal, it is the responsibility of the coach to kind of bring them back to the focus of the goal. So it could be like the coach could say that we are midway in the session now. If it was a 30-minute session, we have spent 15 minutes together, and this is where we are. So would you like to go deeper here in this area A which you're talking about, or is there any other direction that we should take? So it could be also like towards the end of the session, the coach could say that, okay, now we are 5 minutes left for our session today. And, we also wanted to cover B and C, but we haven't. So what will be the most useful way for us to work on that? Shall we review that in the next session? So really, the coach's role is to keep a track on the goal that the client had brought and keep them, bringing them back on the goal that they wanted for this session. And also when you kind of check in with the clients, in between, keep checking in with the client so that time will automatically be tracked for the client as well. Because when they are sharing, they will get lost in their own stories. So it's a role of the coach to keep the time, to keep the focus on the goal. And it's also important that while the coach is setting the goal for the session, if the client is bringing a very large goal, For example, the client says that I want to see world peace. Now, world peace is a very, very large goal. So, what about that world peace that the client wants to see in these 30 minutes that you have together with that client? So, really asking them what piece, what part of that world peace is something which is the focus for our session today. And which direction they want to go in. If they want to go to west, what part of west do they want to go in? So, and how will they know that they have reached that direction that they wanted to go in? So identifying or reconfirming what the client wants to accomplish, point number 6, is the most important part of a coaching session, like in an individual coaching session. And when 6 is done well, 7 also happens well. 7 is partners with the client to define what the client believes they need to address or resolve to achieve what they want to accomplish in the session. So now there could be different ways of partnering with the client in terms of addressing or resolving what they need to kind of resolve or address in order to achieve what they want to accomplish in the session. Uh, what I usually do is I use a lot of positive psychology here. So I use the strength based approach. So I kind of try and shift the client in terms of looking at what do they already have as their strengths. So what is already possible for them to look at? What are their strengths that can support them here in terms of achieving their goal? So that could be one of the ways of doing it, or it is also useful to kind of see that what is the blocker, what is coming in the way. Some coaches also do that, and that enables the client to kind of see what belief or what is it that is not working for them, and kind of take a step forward or move forward in the direction of the goal for the session. I would pause here to check if there is anything anyone wants to add.
Yes, if you're speaking with a client that has a tendency to self-deprecate or really not be able to easily access their innate strengths and skills, what's some strategies that you use if you've encountered that?
So if they are not able to access their strength, I don't try to go in an area where I say that, okay, you should know your strength and you need to know your strength, because that will be then my way of looking at the client, and then I'm pushing the client or leading the client, or also judging the client that they don't know their strength. So then I just work with the client with what they are bringing. And it when I say that I have a strength based approach, it is not something which will work for each of my client, because every client is unique, as you are sharing this example. So then I work with whatever is available. Like if the client is really not able to in the journey, I am sure that there will be something that will come up. So I let that time be, like let that relationship mature, like for us together. And whenever the client is bringing something which I see, which they are not able to see as their strength, but I am able to see as their strength, then I kind of share that with their permission that, I'm noticing something here, I'm observing this. So how would this work with this? But never ever forcing them to kind of, come up with strengths. I don't even use the word strengths or values or beliefs, because not all clients understand that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So the eighth one, we already discussed this one, and this is also the marker 3.2. Partners with the client to define or reconfirm measures of success for what the client wants to accomplish in the coaching engagement or individual session. So this happens also at the beginning, at the goal setting session for the entire coaching journey together, that what will be the measure of success for the client. If they're saying that I want to be for example, leadership presence is the overall coaching journey's goal, then of course leadership presence will have to be translated into what is it that it will show up as tangibly for the client. So for example, they say that I will feel less resistance in going for networking events, or I'll be a better communicator. So whatever it is, like two, three things that they say that this is how it will show up for me, how will they know that they have got that? So what will be the measure of success? So if they're saying that I'll be better at communication, what will be a measure of success for the client to be better at communication? So really coming up with a few things that can be tangible. Sometimes it could also be intangible. So they might say that it will feel good for me. I will know it because it will feel good, or I will know because it will start showing up in my relationships. My relationships will be more positive, or will be more in harmony. So this is how I will know. So it could be tangible or it could also be intangible, but it's important to uh, identify and confirm what will be the measure of success for the entire coaching journey of the 6 to 12 months, and also in each individual session what the client is coming up with as the session goal, what will be the measure of success for that session. Ninth, we have already discussed. So partners with the client to manage the time and focus for the session. And this is completely the coach's responsibility to keep the client focused on the goal for the session, and also to kind of check in with the client about time. So how much time do we have together for this session today? For and then we are halfway through the session, and is the direction working for you? Should we take some other direction, or should we go here deeper, or some other should we explore something else? So checking with them 2 3 times, or at least a few times in the session, so that they are also able to know that where are they with respect to the time and the goal. So they can partner with you to kind of choose the focus or direction for the session. So this ninth is about that. Tenth is continuous coaching in the direction of the client's desired outcome, unless the client indicates otherwise. So a lot of times as a coach, you will observe that the client is going into some other direction. Like they started the session with a particular goal or topic, but now they are getting drifted, and they are picking up something else. And of course, everything is important for the client, and we are completely respectful of that while they are talking about a particular topic in this session, they B or C is also important for them, and they that comes to their mind while reflecting, and they start going deeper there. So there, in that moment, it is the coach's responsibility to kind of gently interrupt the client, that is it okay if I interrupt you here? take their permission, set a frame. I am hearing that this is the goal for the session. You wanted to kind of explore your communication skills in this session, or how to be a better communicator. But I'm hearing that something else, whatever came up, is coming up for you now. Um, so, what do you think will be useful for us? Should we explore B? Do you think it is relevant for the topic A, or should we continue to talk about A? So, just checking in with the client when they are getting drifted towards another topic. Also, if the client says that I want to explore B now, or is more of a priority and importance for me in this session, I want to talk about B and not A, what they said earlier, you need to do recontracting. So now, if B is the goal for the session, then what is the measure of success for B? So all those things, like 3.1 to 3.4 markers, will now be done with reference to topic or goal B, not A, because now the client wants to talk about B. So whenever the client is changing the focus for the session, important for the coach to kind of check in and then see where do the client wants to go, and kind of partner with them again. And 11th one is about partnering with the client to end the coaching relationship in a way that honors the experience. So basically, it would be about the entire coaching relationship from the beginning to the end, the entire journey that they had together. And also, there most of the time, there is a last session, which is like a feedback session, or a session which could also be with the sponsor and the relevant stakeholders involved, about the whole coaching journey, the progress the client experienced in that. The client is sharing what they experienced during the entire process. And so it could be with them, or it could be in a one-on-one setting. It could be just with the client, reflecting on the entire journey. It helps the client, and when the coach is able to acknowledge also the progress that they noticed during the entire journey together with the client, then it also encourages the client to kind of keep taking the actions and building on to the change journey that they have kind of taken for themselves. So very, very important, very, very it is very good for both the coach and the client to have. And a last session, which is the we can say the checkout session, where they're coming together. The client also gives the coach some acknowledgement of what they got from that journey. So it's very useful for both the sides. So now let's look at some sample questions. So there are two that I have here. One is in the ACC format. So this is the new ACC format effective March onwards this year. So let's look at this question and try and see what will be the answer for this question. A client asks a coach for advice about how to carry out a new challenging assignment. What is the best action for the coach to take?
D.
Can you repeat?
D. Explain the distinction between coaching and consulting, and invite the client to identify strategies they could explore together.
Anyone else feels any other options? Yulia, you want to share
May I
something?
speak?
Yes, please.
What about D? So explain the distinction. and maybe identify the strategies in the coaching format without giving the training.
Yes, both you and Maria, both of you are saying D, yes. Is there anyone else who feels any other option is okay here? So yes, D is the answer here. And this is as per the competency also, that what coaching is not. So, the coach is also explaining the distinction between coaching and consulting, and also inviting the client to identify strategies. So this is about also partnering with the client in terms of what can be explored together. So hence, this is the answer. Now, this one is as per the credentialing exam format. A client comes to a session appearing stressed. When the coach asks what the client wants to talk about, the client frantically lists a major event they are planning at work, a large family gathering they are organizing, and caring for their aging parents. What should the coach do? So, in the credentialing exam format, we usually have we have to decide the best action and the worst action. So, you need to choose an option for best action and one for the worst action here.
Oh,
Yes, Yulia.
I would say 3 is the best action. Yes, but may I ask you a question?
Yes.
Like, if the client seems like worried, right? So he seems stressed, and he's speaking about the 3 major events. Like, can we speak a little bit about stress, or we really like stick to the facts we hear? Like, can you like dwell a little bit on that? I mean, sharing some empathy, because he appears stressed. He doesn't say he's stressed, but we're sensing he's stressed.
Hmm. Okay, I'll answer that. Like after everyone has shared, I'll definitely comment on that.
I would go for 2 as the best action. And let me reread the worst and I will get back here.
Which one you're saying?
For the best action, maybe number 2.
Asked. Okay, more about.
And for the worst, I may say the 4th. I don't know. So
I would say 1 is the worst one because they are feeling stressed. We are sensing it, but we're just starting the session anyway. So we smash the client.
mhm.
is it just me or you stop sharing, Rashmi,
You're
the
not able to
screen?
see the screen?
I don't anymore, but maybe it's me. I don't know. Maybe I touched something. I don't know.
Are the others able to see the screen?
I can see the screen really well. It's in the middle.
Okay, so the best action here is option 3. acknowledge that the client has shared three significant challenges that they are facing, and ask the client which one they would like to explore first. And Yulia said that, because they are stressed, isn't it important to kind of understand that they are stressed and speak about that? Uh, so when the option says that acknowledge that the client has shared three significant challenges, so this part of acknowledgement might also cover that you are saying that I'm hearing that this is very stressful for you. I can notice this is very stressful for you. This must be difficult for you. So you acknowledge the clients, or you show that concern, or you show that acknowledgement for what the client is bringing. And you also acknowledge that there are these three challenges that you're holding with this, and then ask the client to choose. So it is okay as a coach to show empathy, to show concern, and to show support for the client. Uh, do that, and then kind of ask them for acknowledge these challenges that they're talking about, and then kind of understand the direction in which the client wants to go from here. Completely okay to do that. In terms of choosing the best option here, the option three is the most suitable, because because the language of acknowledgement kind of covers that part. And then it is about also choosing the focus for the session. So two things are coming together here in this. So hence becomes the most suitable out of all the four options here. And what is the worst action here is, yes, Marlinda.
I wanted to say that in terms of if a word that I see coming out a lot in this competency is the word partnering. And so 3 for me feels the most like partnering, because we're asking the client what they would like to explore first. Again, for me, that feels like a demonstration of partnering.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for adding that. And what is the worst action is, as all of you said, is this number 4, ask the client to begin. So here partnering is not happening. The coach is deciding what is the direction for the session, and hence this becomes the worst action.
Excuse me, Rashmi, you are not sharing anymore the presentation. You are aware of that, right?
Is it? Okay, I'll share
Well,
it
at
again.
least I cannot see it. I see you
I'll
talking.
try. Okay, I'll share it again maybe for
Okay,
you
excellent.
if
Thank
it becomes visible. Let me know if you're able to see.
you. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So third is the best action and fourth is the worst action. So sometimes you will also have to see in the options that as per the competency, which is the one which is with reference to our competencies, core competencies, and also which is the most suitable out of these four. So how we kind of eliminated in the best action that although maybe one was also possible, and why is 2 not the best option, why is 4 not the best option. So you will have to really eliminate that, okay, partnering is important in the competency 3, and that is not happening here, so hence this is not the best option. And words like acknowledging, exploring, partnering, wherever they are coming, that also kind of gives you a clue that this is more suitable, because these are the language of our competency, or how it is expected. So those could also be some of your clues to see and eliminate which is the best or the worst option. So most of your questions will be coming from either the code of ethics or from your core competencies, And there is also a document called When to Refer to Therapy. So you can also refer that. So to understand, because some of the questions will also be coming from there, that, when, which we covered in the last webinar, that there are some questions which come from When to Refer to Therapy. So you can also read those and see all the resources are available on the ICF website. So now we move on to how are we keeping on time? Okay, we have exceeded a little bit of time. Okay, I'll try to cover this one a little faster. So cultivates trust and safety. Now this one is about how this relationship shows up. So how do you show up in terms of the being as the coach in this relationship? So partners with the client to create a safe, supportive environment that allows the client to share freely, maintains a relationship of mutual respect and trust. So this one is about really coming with an understanding that the client is a fellow human being, and what I am doing here as a coach is holding a very sacred space for this fellow human being to be there, a very non-judgmental space, a space where they can feel very safe in terms of sharing. So this is mostly about that what is that kind of space that we are holding as coaches for our client, in which they are able to share freely. A client maybe who has not been able to share freely in their childhood with their parents or with their partners or with their friends, and they have, because they were not allowed to share freely in all these contexts, they don't have they don't know how to share freely, they don't know how to trust. So probably it is a space for them to open up and to feel vulnerable and to be able to share. So this is about that. So the first one is seeks to understand the client within their context, which may include their identity, environment, experiences, values, and beliefs. So now this client who is coming to me is maybe coming from a different gender, maybe is coming from a very different environment or experience, is holding different values, is holding different beliefs than mine. But when I say that seeks to understand is being open to. So I'm also a human being. I understand that I come with my own biases, I come with my own judgments. But can I be open to understand this client in a non-judgmental way? Can I show up as somebody who is just holding this space without bringing my own biases, without bringing my own judgment? So that is the development process of the coach throughout their own coaching journey, that how do I become more and more non-judgmental, how do I hold a space which is free of my own biases for this client. And this client is coming from a different context, different environment, values, beliefs, and how do I understand them better? uh, Demonstrates respect for the client's identity, perceptions, style, and language, and adapts one's coaching to the client. So here I can give you a few examples. The clients that I work with, for example, my client one is very unique and different from my client two. So my client one might have a working style of or learning style of auditory mode. Like they learn by listening. So maybe I will ask a question to them that uh, in this situation that you want to do, what are you hearing in this meeting room? For example, if you're sitting in this meeting room, this discussion is happening, what are you hearing? So it's an auditory question because my client is more auditory. And if the other client is more visual, then I will ask them to visualize what are they seeing in the same room. So depending on who this client is, I adapt my coaching to the client, to the style that works the best for my client. Um, Acknowledges and respects the client's unique talents, insights, and work in the coaching process. So this is more about in the session and also in the whole journey together. Every time in the session when you are hearing that the client was able to be open with you, was able to be vulnerable with you, was going into sensitive area and sharing those sensitive things with you, uh, because they trust you. So it's important to acknowledge that the client was vulnerable in the session. The client did that work in that session. So when we acknowledge the client in the session, it helps them to be more vulnerable or to be more open with you. And it also helps them to kind of work on their goals in a better way if the coach kind of acknowledges them. So acknowledging the client's work in the coaching process is a very, very important competency, and it is also a part of the markers. Uh, Shows support, empathy, and concern for the client. Now, we were discussing this in the ICF credentialing question that we were doing. It is important for the coach. So, whenever the coach is hearing that the client is going through some difficulties, processing something difficult, it is important for the coach to show empathy. But it is important to show very clean empathy, clean support, clean concern. So, clean will mean that it is detached from my own stories. Like when I am empathetic to the client, I'm just empathetic towards the client. I'm not bringing my own, baggage in that okay, I also went through the same challenges in my life, and then I get triggered with that. So it's very clean when we are showing support, empathy, and concern for the client. It's very clean. It's only for that, in that session, for that client. It's very neutral. It's detached from my own things that I kind of, I might be bringing if I'm not conscious as a professional coach. So that's about the empathy, support, and the concern part. And there are markers which specifically talks about this. So when we see that the client is going through a difficult emotion, the coach can kind of say that I can hear that this is very difficult for you. I am there. I'm here with you. So just, pausing, letting the client process, being with them, showing support, concern, empathy is a part of our ICF markers. Acknowledges and supports the client's expression of feelings, perceptions, concerns, beliefs, and suggestions. So here now the coaching is going beyond the cognitive. So the client, what they express, the goals they talk about, all of that is happening in the mind, in the cognitive, and all the feelings and everything is stored in the body. So the coach is able to go beyond the cognitive here to sense if the client is talking about some feeling, and sometimes they're not talking about some emotions or feelings, but you can sense that as a coach. So you might say that I'm observing that your voice is cracking now in this moment as you share about this. I'm wondering if there is something difficult going on for you. And that's that the client is not sharing an emotion or feeling, but the coach is observing that there is an emotion or feeling present and is inquiring about that. So the coach is in the service of the client, completely listening for things that the client themselves are not able to tell themselves. And the coach is then kind of creating that space for the client to share those as well. Demonstrates openness and transparency as a way to display vulnerability and build trust with the client. And an example of this could be that the client is sharing something difficult and they start crying in the session. Now, as a coach, what do you do? So, my way of this would be that I remain with my client in that moment of processing, and verbally or non-verbally, I tell them that it's okay to cry and that it's a safe space and that you will not be judged to cry here in this space. So all whatever uh, like in when I say in a uh, very calm voice that it's okay, you can cry, and if you're feeling okay, you can continue. So that time the client can understand that, okay, my coach is here and there is no judgment happening for me. So basically creating a space where they can be vulnerable and they can do what they are not able to do otherwise in the outside world, where they are not able to be vulnerable, they are not able to express themselves completely. This is the space which we are creating where they are able to be vulnerable, they are able to express themselves freely, and they are able to build trust. And it all happens over time. It doesn't happen in one session, but it happens over time with the client. But demonstrating that behavior through the way we are questioning. So our questions will demonstrate all of these. That is the coach coming from that attitude or not. So let's look at one sample question here. A university biomedical researcher is working with a coach to improve their interactions with colleagues. The client is a very analytical thinker and can easily explain detailed data points and complex graphs, but seems reluctant sharing anything personal with the coach. In previous sessions, the coach encouraged the client to describe how they felt at social events, but the client seems highly uncomfortable, answering only with short and one word responses. When the client arrives to their session today, the client silently hands the coach a journal. The client has written several detailed entries over the last week about their experience attending a university luncheon, a faculty party, and a staff development workshop since their last session. While the client sees little to the coach in the moment, their entries show deep reflections about the anxiety the client experienced at these events and their desire to overcome social anxiety. What should the coach do? Any answers by anyone? Yes, Yulia.
It's a very interesting, tricky question. I will just, think out loud. I would probably ask about in your awareness, is the best action. And I would say taking the steps to overcome anxiety without discussing it, without giving any empathy or, creating the space for this to be revealed would probably be the worst one. So these are my
And
thoughts.
what's your for choosing four? What's your rationale behind choosing four for the best action?
Well, because okay, I was thinking analytically, like asking them to summarize would be like showing no attention and would not be creating the trust because like I don't care, I haven't read it, so summarize it for me. So for me, this is rude and not very coaching style. But rationale behind three, no, behind two is because it's what the client gets for themselves. It's not us psychoanalyzing the client, because if I was the therapist, I would probably ask more specific questions. But in coaching, we share, the responsibility. And so it's important what the client sees as important in the journal. But I might be mistaken, just thinking out loud.
So you're going with four, right?
With the best one, yes.
Okay. Let's stay with the best one for now, for everyone, and then we'll go to the worst. Any other answers for the best action for anyone else?
Well, I think four is not bad, and I don't know, maybe one to think about that one. I don't know. The two best would be those, I think.
You're confused between one or four.
Yeah, well, uh, the thing that but I think it's tricky because I think it's important to try to get the emotions of the client in a way, considering all the explanations. So, but I am also caught a little bit because for my psychologist side, that I may go too deep into emotions. So, but I think four it's a good question anyhow, because it talks about awareness. And if he did this exercise, the client did, it's interesting to take some material from there as well. I don't know.
Hmm. Hmm. Anyone else wants to attempt, try what could be the best action?
I can try with
Yes.
my very super fresh. I haven't worked as a coach, haven't studied. I'm just interested and want to pursue this eventually. Have a totally different profession today. Looking at this, I would say number one with my freshman, because this is a client that is has a difficulty in opening and giving information. So I would say I would really like to create, like you said before in the previous slides, that you also want to create a space where the client is comfortable and they are open, and you're also open, that safe place. So asking the client to explore the emotions that they have described in the journal, because first of all, you're acknowledging, and in acknowledging, you're creating that safe space, but then asking them again, there you are like training the client to say it's safe to talk. That's why I would choose one.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So, option number one is the answer here in the best action. And Absolutely. Like, as also Faith mentioned, acknowledging the work that the client has done, and that we read in the previous slide as well, that it's important to acknowledge the work the client has done. And this also becomes a suitable option because the client is not comfortable in sharing their emotions. That's the area the client is not so comfortable in. And then it is the in the coaching session, the coach is trying to create a space slowly, gently, with the client's permission, where the client is able to feel, comfortable in exploring some of the emotions. Because when they explore that with the coach, that's when they go deeper, and hence the coach is trying to create that space for the client to feel more and more comfortable in exploring. At least they are inviting the client, and of course the client can say no also, but the client is inviting the client if they would like to explore some of the emotions they described in the journal, because that will give both the coach and the client some opportunity to go a little bit more deeper from here. And it is also done with permission of the client, and also in acknowledgement of the work that the client has already done. So that makes this the best option. The second one, ask the client if they would summarize the entries they detail in the journal for the coach, is will not give them like the depth in the coaching session, because it will just be a summary. um, Asking the client to identify some steps they can take to overcome the anxieties they wrote about is again not acknowledging what the client has already done as work. And the fourth one, asking the client what new awareness they developed about themselves through the journaling process, is a good option. The only thing is that it is not giving a space for the client and the coach to go deeper. And also, it is not enabling that space for the client to feel comfortable in exploring their emotion, because that is the challenge for the client. So that is also why the option number four, although is a good option, but is not like the best option here in this context. Any questions? So we can move to the worst action. What would be the worst action here?
Maybe between 2 and 3, I would say, but 3 is a little pushing the client too much, It's like, come on, okay, you can even talk about anxiety and you want me to identify what steps I can do to fight her, I don't know. I would
Yeah.
say that the worst is that one. I don't know.
Yes. That's a very good rational, good logic. Yeah. So yeah, third one is the worst action here. Asking the client to identify some steps they can take to overcome the anxieties they wrote about. So, as Maria also kind of mentioned, this is like going and asking the client to directly think about the action. So, it's almost like you have not done the evoking awareness part in the coaching session, and we are directly going to the facilitating growth, which is the last competency. So we cannot go to action unless we have explored, what is really coming in the way, what are the challenges, what are the discomforts for the client, and hence three is the worst action here. Okay,
Rashmi, is this for
yes.
ACC? Is this the old credential?
No, this is not AC. This is the credentialing exam format. I
Okay,
haven't.
for
Yeah.
PCC or for ACC?
PCC, yeah.
Ah,
For ACC new format, the one we did earlier, I have not included a question here, like only
no,
the,
that's
but
okay. Just for me to know. Thank you.
Great. So I think this was it. Uh, any other reflections before we close? Anything else? Thank you, Gerhard.
Rashmi, I had a question for something you talked at the beginning about the goal setting, because as I mentioned to you before, most of my customers, all of them, they are private individuals. They want to work on something. But when you have when you're really doing the executive coaching in a company, corporate, usually the goal come maybe from a 360 evaluation or things like that. So what is the how do you know as a coach the coachee is really buying the goal, if you know what I mean? Okay, I'm committed to this, because it could be, but what if he says yes in front of his the stakeholders or the sponsor, and then you get into the coaching and the guy say, oh, I don't agree with that, or I don't know, what do you do there?
Yes, absolutely. So that happens, and that's very common also. That a lot of times the organization, if they're using coaching as a method to push the agenda for themselves to the coach, it is quite difficult. So in those cases, I have been very transparent with the organization or the stakeholders or the sponsors sometimes, that that you are coming up with this goal, and the client probably is not in fully in alignment with the goal. So let's have like a check-in session again, or let's have like a common meeting again, where we discuss this and see it from all perspectives, that how this could be more holistic for the client. I also talk with the client, if that is not possible, if that dynamic is not there, that coaching is very holistic. So irrespective of the what that we are going to work on, there will be a who. So, and a lot of coaching that we do, what ICF talks about, and we will also be covering in our webinar coming forward, is very holistic. So, apart from the what of the client, the who gets touched. So who is this client? Who do they need to show up as? And their being, the being of the client also gets touched. So I also talk about that with the client in my very first session, that you will not be only be able to accomplish your goals and your outcomes. You
So
will be
I'll
a very
book a liaison, do you think, for after the
Grace, I think
church?
you are
Do you think we should invite Stay and Sophia?
one second. How do Grace? I think you have become unmuted, and yeah. So that is about what I try to explain to the client, and I completely believe in as well, is that coaching is very holistic. So it will not only be about the goals or the outcomes that the client is looking, but it will also be about the being of the client. So if the client might become a better mother, a better husband, a better sister, or a better brother, or a more compassionate person after the session, irrespective of that not being the goal for the coaching journey together. So I also try to show that picture to my client before we start working together. If I can sense, I can understand that they're really not so aligned with the goals. So that is one other way that I handle such situations.
Okay,
I hope that answers something for you.
everything helps. Thank you.
Most welcome. So thank you very much, all of you, for your presence today, for your time. And let's be connected. I'll also share my LinkedIn here for all of us to be connected. Um, and you all can share yours as well. So let's stay in touch. And if there is any other question you have or anything else you want to ask, feel free to get in touch on LinkedIn with me, and we can reflect, explore things together. Absolutely happy to answer if you have any questions.
That's just one quick question, Rashmi. When you were explaining the end of the coaching relationship, one of the pieces that I wasn't clear about, I thought there was also an end of the session whereby you and the client kind of revisit the goals of the session and the measures of success. I just wanted to touch on that. Is that also what is meant by that last marker?
Yes, so that happens in each session and also in the overall coaching journey. So for the overall coaching journey, there is like I do a session, separate session for the checkout session where we are reflecting on the entire journey, what goals they wanted to accomplish, what they got in respect to those goals, and measure of success. And for each individual session also, before the 5 minutes to the ending time, I check in with the client that this is the goal you came up with, and this is how you said you will know that you have got this. So I'm just wondering, I'm just curious, where are we with respect to these measure of success for this goal, etc. So we kind of close it with what we had come up with, the measure of success, the goal, the measure of success. We try to check that by the end of 5 minutes. And sometimes there are things that they still are open. So we also have an agreement that, okay, in the next session, we will probably touch upon this, maybe, B or C that we also wanted to see today in this session. So something on those lines, we try to close with that.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. All right. So thank you very much, all of you, for your expressions, sharing, reflections. It was very useful for co-creating this learning space together. And hope to see you in the next webinar, and let's stay in touch. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.